Item number 17 is amendment to the 2019 Collection Services Franchise Agreement with Recology, Yuba City, presented by Diana Langley, our interim city manager.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
As such, too.
Huh?
Last meeting as such, too.
Yes, yes.
You made it. Well, we'll see.
I made it.
We'll see here. Hold on.
Going out with a bang on this one, huh? All right. So before you tonight is the amendment to the 2019 Collection Services Franchise Agreement with Recology Yuba City. For a little bit of background, in October of 2018, the City Council approved a new collection service franchise agreement with Recology Yuba City for implementation on October 1st of this year. In February of 2019, representatives from Recology submitted a request to the city requesting to evaluate amending the franchise agreement. To shift gears a little bit to Biosolids disposal, in December of 2011, the City Council approved a side letter agreement with Recology for biosolids disposal, which biosolids is a byproduct of the wastewater treatment process. The current side letter agreement expires September 30th, 2019, and on May 21st of this year, City Council authorized myself to negotiate a new agreement for biosolids disposal with Recology. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through the details of the amendment, the proposed amendment. So for on-call electronic waste collection and on-call universal waste collection, the current agreement states that Recology is to provide on-call collection services on a subscription basis at a rate not exceeding the maximum service rate for such service. However, that rate was not determined. So the proposed amendment will modify the language to reflect that the need can be met under current programs, which would be the household hazardous waste disposal facility or going out to Recology's facilities in Marysville. For vehicle requirements, the current agreement requires that Recology shall provide a fleet of Model 2019 collection vehicles sufficient in number and capacity to efficiently perform the work required by the agreement in strict accordance with its terms. Under the proposed amendment, we'd remove the requirement for Model 2019 collection vehicles and instead include a list of the vehicle inventory Recology intends to use to provide services under the agreement. So their current fleet dates from September of 2015 to February of 2019. In regard to single-family dwelling carts, under the current agreement, Recology will provide each single-family dwelling with new wheeled carts for automated collection. The default service would be 96 gallon, though customers could request a 64 or 32 gallon cart, but they would pay the same as the 96 gallon cart rate. Under the proposed amendment, the requirement for replacement of new carts would be removed, and single-family dwelling customers would be able to choose between 32, 64, or 96 gallon carts for solid waste and receive a 64 gallon cart for recyclable materials and 96 gallon cart for green waste and pay based upon the size of the solid waste cart. For distribution of carts and bins, under the current agreement, Recology would purchase and distribute new carts and bins to customers. Under the proposed amendment, it would remove the requirement for new carts and bins. For recycling and organic materials and proper procedure, the current agreement defines a process to work with customers when the customer does not properly segregate recyclable materials or organic materials from the solid waste, green waste, exempt waste, or construction demolition debris bins. Under the proposed amendment, it would add language to clarify that the infractions noted are per agreement year and to allow Recology to charge a fee for 3 or more instances of contamination in customers' recyclables container. The amendment also requests to address Recology's responsibilities with respect to AB 341 and 1826 compliance. And under the proposed amendment, this would actually put Yuba City's contract in alignment with the Regional Waste Management Authority contracts for the other agencies within the authority. In regard to right to audit, the current agreement deals with city audits of Recology's financial and other records. The language is virtually identical to the RWMA contract, but vague about when Recology would need to reimburse the city for audit costs. So under the proposed amendment, it adds language that the scope of the audit may be expanded and the city may be able to recover any additional costs resulting from the expanded scope if inaccuracies are found in Recology's payments to the city. Extraordinary rate adjustments. Under the current agreement, it allows Recology to request special rate adjustments for a wide variety of unspecified cost changes. Under the proposed amendment, it would delete the current section 10.6 and adopt the RWMA methodology for special rate adjustments, which only allows Recology to request special rate adjustments for certain specified events, which are standard in the industry, such as changes in law and changes in government fees. The RWMA methodology also allows the city to recover its costs of reviewing the special rate adjustment request and has a clear process for handling such requests. Section 10.6, this section doesn't exist in the current agreement. The new section would define the process for how a request for an extraordinary rate adjustment should be conducted. And then section 10.7 would also be a new section that adds language that the initiator of the request for an extraordinary rate adjustment shall bear the burden of justifying by substantial evidence its entitlement to any adjustment in maximum service rates under section 10.6. So again, to shift gears to biosolids handling. So rather than address the biosolids through a side letter, working with the city attorney recommended actually including as part of the agreement, and it provides disposal rates defined for the next 4 years, and with any years after that being inflated per the WST index. And I'm trying to recall what the WST acronym. Water, sewer, trash, yes, index. And so as of October 1st, 2019, we would pay $38 per ton. October 1st, 2020, it would increase to $51. October 1st, 2021, it would increase to $61. And October 1st, 2022, it would increase to $76. In addition to the disposal rate, you would also have a haul rate of $375 per haul. And then after October 1st of 2020, you would have that increase per the WST index as well. Key part of this agreement is that either party may terminate the biosolids handling in its entirety after the first 3 years upon 90 days prior written notice. And this is key as we are performing our wastewater master plan and evaluating different options for biosolids disposal. During that time frame, there might become something that comes up that's more cost effective, and this gives us an out. And then this is a city amendment request. Since we were evaluating an amendment to the contract, there has been changes in legislation that we felt was necessary to update the agreement to comply with current legislation. So the fiscal impact. Recology has agreed to match Yuba City's rates to the other 5 agencies within the Regional Waste Management Authority. So that's Sutter and Yuba counties, cities of Live Oak, Marysville, and Wheatland. Cost impacts for biosolids handling. Currently, we pay approximately $290,000. As of October 1st, 2019, that would increase to almost $500,000. And if you extend out to October 1st, 2022, you'd be looking at almost $850,000. These rate increases were not included in the latest wastewater rate model. Next year, as we go through the process of initiating a new rate study, we will input that into the model to see what the impacts are to rates. And in regard to the rates, as mentioned previously, under this proposed amendment, the rates would match the RWMA. Within the staff report, there was a comparison of the proposed rates to the rates that are in the current agreement that we have. There's fluctuations plus and minus across the board. For the residential rates for the carts, for the most part, they are less than the current Yuba City rates, and then also the customers have the flexibility of choosing the bin size that they want. With regard to commercial, some of the rates are a little bit less, some of the rates are a little bit more, but there's minor fluctuations when compared to the current contract that we have in place. And so with that, I would be happy to answer any questions. I would like to note that we do have some representatives from Recology in the audience. We have Sal Caniglio, I hope I'm saying that correctly, Dave Adler, and then Tom Norris as well. And I know that they'd be happy to answer any operational questions or any questions related to their amendment.
All right, thank you very much. You guys have any before we send it out to the public? Nothing yet? All right, so we have public comment period on this. We have one for who's individual, but John Buckland, if you could take the podium. He has 5 minutes, and followed by Scott Cunin, who has a interest card here, or speaker card. And if anyone else would like to comment, feel free to queue up behind Scott.
Mayor, City Council members, and citizens. Thank you for allowing me to speak regarding this agenda item. This is an amendment to a contract currently not in force. No comments I make tonight are intended to reflect on any employees or owners of Recology Yuba City. My comments are on behalf of the ratepayer, directed to actions of Recology management, and those charged as a fiduciary for the citizens of Yuba City. The council is charged to act in a legal and ethical relationship of trust. The actions of this council need to be independent and absent of special influence. Some members of this council are personal friends with current and recent managers of Recology Yuba City. Some refer to these relationships on social media as brother. All of you received a portion of the tens of thousands of dollars in your political campaigns over the last 3 years issued by Recology Yuba City. 2 of you spent time in a resort with a consultant of Recology, and at least 1 of you was whisked off on a private plane to meet with the CEO of Recology in San Francisco. The action tonight, or the proposed action tonight, is a clear perversion of a trusted public bidding process which engaged 4 national bidders to determine the best services for our ratepayers in a true market test. The contract was directed with public comment over a period of a year and best practices in the industry to reduce waste contamination from overflowing into recycling and provide apples to apples comparisons of the market and proposals to provide services. The contract was voted on by the elected body and signed by Mayor Ditball on October the 3rd, 2018. The contract was countersigned by the CEO of Recology on 1/30 of this year. 2 days later, the vice president and group manager of the Inland Group for Recology presented a letter requesting 5 changes to the contract, including the elimination of the new equipment. Why is this significant, you may ask? This proposal is clearly a bait and switch. In the spring of 2018, the prior council directed negotiators to engage Recology Yuba City negotiations in an effort to award the waste management contract. Shortly after negotiations were initiated, Recology Yuba City placed an alternative proposal on the table. In this proposal, they offered to reduce the rate by a significant percentage in lieu of the all-new equipment requirement. This meant Recology Yuba City would be relieved of purchasing new equipment at the estimated cost of $10.5 million. And they would provide the ratepayer the savings. Shortly after this proposal was offered, negotiations stalled. Negotiations didn't resume until Recology Yuba City reached an agreement with the RWMA-5. When negotiations resumed, Recology Yuba City withdrew its offer regarding the rate reduction with the elimination for new equipment. The Yuba City Council, you, are in a tight spot. The ratepayer is entitled to further reduction in rates as proposed related to the elimination of the equipment provision. Your fiduciary responsibility is to complete a financial analysis of the savings and to incorporate those savings into the rates before considering implementation. Failure to meet this responsibility will likely be met with legal challenges on behalf of the bidders and the ratepayers. I do commend Recology for taking a proactive position in clarifying language that may have been confusing. But I would ask these questions of the council. Why have you commingled the biosolids into the contract? This should be a contract held separately and tested for rate on the open market. What's the current status of the post-closure liability agreement for the landfill in Marysville? Offering pricing options based on collection size will lead to overflow contamination, and the consequences will be the trash police are coming to your house. I live in the south end of Yuba City. Monday's collection day. we have an insurgent force of homeless that go through our trash on Monday night. These individuals toss trash from one receptacle to the other. They're searching for treasure. This contract makes the ratepayers responsible for the fines imposed by this contract. Are the commercial customers subject to fines for contamination? Many of the commercial bins.
All right, John, there's your 5 minutes right there. Scott, welcome to the podium.
Good evening, Mayor Harris.
Good evening.
Other honorable members of the council, and those of the public here from Yuba City. I apologize, Mayor. I did not even find out about this until about 8:30 or 9 o'clock this morning, and I didn't know that it was on tonight's agenda, so I did not have an opportunity to request the extra 2 minutes that I would have requested had I didn't have 24 hours to do that. So if possible, you can grant me an extra minute or two to go through what I've just one page to, because I would appreciate it. I'm deeply concerned about this amendment to our contract for waste management. There is not a complete, in spite of what we've seen, not a complete financial analysis of each item considered for modification in this proposal. For example, the new equipment requirement, which was previously mentioned for the winning contractor, is proposed to be removed. As part of this amendment, the cost savings to the contractor should be analyzed and reported to the public. In case you were wondering, the savings to the contractor is over $11 million. The residential rates for some services went down a few cents. The commercial recycling rates increased by over 25% in some areas and went down a few cents in other areas. The increased and decreased costs for commercial businesses should be analyzed and disclosed to the public. The city should employ a solid waste professional to analyze such information. Perhaps the city's original consultant would be best since he already has the comparative information. The comparison analysis provided by city staff is not consistent with comparing the original Yuba City contract with the proposed city contract. For example, in item 4, which we saw up here just a moment ago, the analyzed comparison between the 4 cubic yard bin of 6 times per week was $875.85 when the actual rate per the current signed contract was $768. These amendments and conditions are a dangerous example of backroom politics, which we should avoid. If you approve this amendment, you will be giving the contractor over $11 million with no consideration for the ratepayers, and that $11 million represents the money that was saved by putting this contract out to bid. Perhaps the contractor's financial stability with the contract they agreed to is in question. If so, the contract should be awarded to the next highest bidder. In closing, let me say this. There is hardly anyone who knows about this matter because we are surreptitiously giving away millions of dollars and hiding what is really happening or what is not happening for the ratepayers. We are changing the conditions of a competitively bid contract which has already been awarded. If the contractor does not want to comply with the contractual obligations, then this contract should be awarded to the next highest bidder. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else care to comment? Welcome, Phil Trainer.
It is nice to be known into the club.
You so sure?
First of all, I would like to say that from a statement that I got from a law firm, when you put anybody under a 5-minute limitation, you're not abiding by the Brown Act. If those people come up and do something on behalf of the city for the good of the for the good of the citizens, they can speak all day. Supposedly, that's what I've been told. I paid a little bit of money to find that out. If it's wrong, it doesn't make any difference. Thank you. Now, I'll go back to the issue of the biosolids. I came here tonight because I read about it in the paper this morning. I think it's wonderful. It is one of the things that you have to do. The state are going to come back and tell you you must do these things. It amazes me how the cost is going to go up from $38 a ton to $90 a ton in 3 years. I have a little bit of a background on this. I brought a group of people up to the city of Yuba City to discuss this maybe 4 or 5 years ago. These people were specialists in the game. The Appeal Democrat made a remark that if you take these biosolids, you can turn them into fertilizer. The state would disagree with you on that. They would say that you can turn it into soil amendments, not fertilizer. But I've used the soil amendments at home and they worked out great. I would suggest that before you, or I would like to think, before the council go any further on this, that they decide to do something and let the public know what's happening. I believe you should probably try to renegotiate the whole thing down, because going from 38 to 90 bucks a ton is ridiculous. Here I go. You're overstaying the Brown Act now. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Before we have Mr. Burns, Mr. City Attorney, he's the second time Phil has mentioned that. Can you please provide us an opinion with that when you get a chance? Not necessarily right now, but if we're violating the law, we don't want to do that.
I can tell you right now, you are not violating the Brown Act by setting time limits as long as they're evenly applied and consistently applied.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir, Mr. Burns.
I have heard that it is illegal to have a tiered system on your utility rates, but we have that. I think I read that through the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. So that is happening with our water and with our PG&E. But I wanted to say this, that commercially, I have a business and pay Recology, and I've been paying. Well, last year I was paying about $290 a month for our bin. Then earlier this year it jumped up to right around $310. Okay, and now I'm up to $345. So it just keeps going up and up and up, and. Now, fortunately, my wife takes care of the garbage bill at home. Praise the Lord. That's one I don't have to pay. And I just choose not to know what's happening there. So I'm imagining that's going up too. And like the man said, there is people going through our trash receptacles weekly. That's a fact all over the city, and I don't think they're doing too well in mine because I do recycle. But to find the customer because something is put from one dumpster or one container to the other, yeah, that seems a little far out to me, a little over the top. And I think Recology, I think they're getting their fair share out of us. So that's my comments.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you once again for letting me speak. I heard the reference to backroom politics, et cetera, et cetera. We all know that what we went through last year was not a pleasurable experience for anyone. It wasn't anything that worked out to being to any one person's advantage. But I'd like to state that I believe that the staff has been looking at this and they are communicating with you and you're looking into what's going on. There are reasons for what's taking place. I respect that. I expect it. I expect you to do the right thing. Referring back to where we stand, the rates are going up. They were going up anyway. We had bidding from another company. The rates were going up from the other company. It was much more than the company that we accepted. It's all been gone through. Was it all agreed on? No. I've gone through the Information Act trying to get an updated version of where we've stood. And as you know, it still is not in existence. The complete contract, everything all agreed to completely. It wasn't when the rates went into payment. And so it's been up in the air. It's not a good position to be in. However, I think you're doing the right thing. I think the voters made a great determination on how they felt about things in this particular arena and how things were handled by hiring a company to go out, find out through town halls how the community felt about it. They came back and reported the community was very happy with the carrier we had. Then immediately our council at that time turned around and said, well, we don't like hearing that. We're going to set it out to bid anyway, regardless. With the help of numerous offers and numerous help from people who are very experienced in business itself and the processes and procedures, they were turned away, nothing was listened to, and we've come up with this quagmire that we now have, which has validity from every side, from every statement that was made. But the reality is, what's best for our community truly, and is a new truck the best thing on my street? Is that really worth it? And the size of my container, I think I should be able to choose it any time I want and not have to have a large container. Anyway, there's numerous things. You can tear this thing apart, but I'm expecting you to do your best. I may not agree 100% with what you do, but I respect what you're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and Council, John Cassidy. Thank you for your diligence in this effort. I'm one citizen that's sick of the garbage question. From a business standpoint, a personal standpoint, we need to move on as a community. We've had an organization here since I moved here in 1985 that's done a remarkable job in handling both business and personal garbage collection. Their record speaks for itself. You'll do the right thing because I know the integrity of this group that sits at the council, and we just need to move on. This is something that's lingered for way too long, and when garbage lingers, it doesn't smell very good. And so we need to move on. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Evening, Council, evening, Mayors. I just wanted to tell you that I applaud the decision to lend a little more reliance on the RWMA. It's established. It's a quality organization that does high-quality oversight, and it gives us constant auditing of not just the performance of the organization, but everything down to the performance of the equipment and the condition of the facilities that we operate. It was mentioned briefly about the landfill. That was probably in my view, the very core, the beginning of this whole battle that has occurred. The last landfill in California that was permitted was in the early 90s. That was our Ostrom Road landfill. It is not easy to do that kind of stuff in this state. It really are opposed to accepting trash anywhere. It's a necessity we're never going to be without. So a big portion of what was being achieved with the RWMA when the city of Yuba City was active was actually setting money aside. We had a year where the cost of operating was less. We had a surplus of funds. We decided to hold that for future replacement of landfill if we choose to do it as our own community, not being beholden to any one individual corporation. We all agreed that was a good thing. Within a couple of years, the Yuba City portion was about 40% of the makeup of the waste collection in this region. Got to a level of about $1 million. Suddenly, the deal changed, and Yuba City started exploring different options with the assumption that maybe there was more money to be gained. And I think at this point in the road, it's plain to see this is a really complex issue. While that argument started into today, China no longer accepts recyclables. That was a big part of rate management. And to get stabilization back in, and more importantly, to be prepared for the future, I think participation with the RWMA for our region, for the size of our region, is the best path forward. So thank you for considering that action. Appreciate the work they're doing and appreciate Recology's work as well. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Anybody else care to say anything? All right, we'll bring it back to council for discussion and action. If any. You're not ready yet?
I'll through the mayor, if ready for comments, aren't you? I agree with many of the comments that were made tonight. Mr. Cassidy, it's time, like you said, it's time to move on. You're here somewhere. There you are. It's time to move on. What this process has done to this community over the last 3 years is absolutely atrocious. And that process ultimately was what led me to decide to be a part of this council, because I saw what it did to this community. I spoke at that lectern over there myself, and it went nowhere. Looking at what this contract does, Mr. Nicoletti, you're here, there you are. You nailed it on the head. We, as a city, decided a couple of years ago to go rogue and do our own thing. And it's time that we get back and build community. And being part of the RWMA is important. My opinion, we should have never pulled out and gone rogue ourselves. There are strength in numbers, and it's a good process. So you're definitely right on there. Things that went on during the process that was alarming to me, and I commend my two colleagues that's up here with me. I watched them try to reach out and do some things, and were unsuccessful. But this process has been going on for months. I trust the subcommittee that has worked on this, and I do appreciate your input, because there was a lot of loose ends left. And at the end of the day, we heard it loud and clear from our ratepayers. Just like we talked about with water and sewer, there's only so much that the pocketbook can bear. And as I said, when we were out doing our speeches and stuff, why should someone pay roughly, if I remember correctly, it was $54 over here for a great big tote, and pay $32 across the river for a great big tote? This contract says, you know what, you can right size yourself, and the difference every month is about $1 difference. It really caters to our ratepayers. Do we like the fact that rates are going up? No, but we can blame the state of California for that a lot, because we've heard it from Mr. Cunin, we've heard it from Recology, we've heard they are hitting us left and right with different fees, and the China's a problem and everything. So a lot of the rates are going up with things that's out of our control. But what we have to do is put this to bed, move forward, and do what's best for our community. And to go back to a comment that I heard at the beginning of the night, to disconnect the biosolids from the waste contract. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the biggest problem we had. Because whether you realized it or not, if we didn't do anything with the biosolids, we had a big pile of you-know-what on the south end of town. And that's what we were left to deal with. It was part of the process when it started, but it conveniently got overlooked and set aside. So this council, as with many other things, have just had to step up and deal with it. And we're going to take care of business. I think, my personal opinion, this is the good thing to do. It's a positive thing. It's great for the ratepayers. It's great in rebuilding relationships. And it takes care of the big pile of crap that we could end up with on the south end of town. Not interested, and as I heard earlier, send it to the next bidder and this and that. Forget that. We're way beyond that as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Mayor. This is basically language cleanup. This is basically doing what we should have done in the first place. Staying consistent with all of the municipalities around so that we're doing what's right for everyone. So I support the work that the subcommittee did. We've got great partners in an organization, and I won't doubt they are a for-profit company. We all are. Every one of us that owns a business. Mr. Cassidy, you're president of a bank. You don't work for free, do you, sir? No. Neither do I. I own my own business. We also dabbled into the mechanism of fleet maintenance. They're still going to spend the $11 million, but they're going to do it in a proper manner. They're going to spend it over time. They're going to replace the trucks as they need it. If you go out and buy all brand new trucks, woo, they look pretty for right now. But guess what? In 10 years, you got to replace all of them again. You're nowhere. That is a very ill-thought process to how to deal with fleet maintenance. Anyone will tell you, even within our city, you have a fleet maintenance replacement program. You never replace the entire fleet all at one time. Garbage bins, totes, if they're bad, they'll get replaced. But at the end of the day, if you go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and buy all brand new bins and totes, give it 3 months, throw a bunch of trash in it, you have smelly bins all over again. We have a obligation to do what's right for the community. We do not have a right to dabble into business operations and decisions that are made at that level. That is ill thought out. That is basically immature in thinking, and we need to stay above the fray and just do what's right, what's for our taxpayers, our ratepayers, and building back relations with RWMA. So I fully support the work you guys have done.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Through the mayor, a lot of things have been said tonight. I approached this from a business aspect and a residential aspect. I looked at it upside down, sideways, was engaged in the process while the former council and staff were engaged with the contract. The one thing, and Councilman Shaw mentioned it, the Biosolids has been kicked down the road since 2011. Kicked down the road. And one of the things that this council is going to try not to do is kick things down the road. They need to be addressed as they come up. Yeah, we could have taken the biosolids, taken it out, negotiated that by itself. There's a couple key things. Those biosolids are treated differently by the state now. They cannot be used as cover in a landfill. So that's going to inflate the cost. And if we did go out on the open market, chances are we would potentially pay even more than what we're being paid or what we're being charged now. We had an opportunity to benefit the residents by including the biosolids negotiation into the residential and the commercial rates. We chose that option. I think it's in the best interest of the citizens of Yuba City, and therefore that's a support position I took. I agree with Councilman Shaw. As a business owner, I don't want government telling me necessarily how to replace my fleet. I don't go out and tell the farmer when it's time to change his tractor. Why should I tell a garbage company when it's time to replace their fleet? They're in the business. If they're going to be successful, they're going to know when to do that. And I respect that. Same thing with the bins. What was the purpose of having every bin in this city replaced? Didn't make sense to me as a citizen. My bins are fine. I don't know that I've ever had to have them replaced. At the end of the day, we sit up here in an effort to try to make the best decisions for the citizens of the community. I don't disrespect previous leadership and previous staff for doing what they did. They thought it was the best thing. This is the best thing that I believe right now. I'm strongly in favor of these amendments, and I appreciate the fact that Recology was able to sit down with us and talk about making some of those amendments in the best interest of a good contract that's fair to both parties. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Comment? Yes, ma'am.
Through the mayor, I would like to add and support what Councilman Shaw and Boomgarden just stated. As I have been learning about regional waste management and the complexities of this, our staff has been diligent in giving us the proper information and guidance of how to make these decisions. And with that, we have worked closely, with our attorney, and there are changes in the state law that have taken effect that perhaps that hadn't been taken into consideration. I think what is important also that we are now part of this regional management, so we're more consistent across the region. We kept hearing within the discussions the inconsistencies, the things that were not being done prior to reviewing this matter. And I think that as a consumer, I have to give a very small example of Recology's attention to customer service, is that I was taking out my recyclable bin, which I have the real big one, and I usually takes me several weeks to fill it up because I don't have a lot of recyclable bin items. And so it was broken on the side. It was like, half a wheel practically working, not working. I never called Recology and said, hey, I would like to have a new bin. I pulled up in my driveway and there's a truck out there in front of my house and they're saying, hi. And I'm like, we're Recology. We're giving you a new bin because we noticed that your other bin was in despair and not working. So without even myself calling, they take that kind of attention to take care of our community. And so with the idea of each customer having the opportunity to decide the size of their own cart is really a good thing. And in long term, it actually, I think, may have some reduction in waste that hasn't really truly been considered. So I'm in full support of what we're doing, and I appreciate the nice compliments from, it is difficult to be in this position, but it's very gratifying when you're doing it with integrity, honesty, and transparency.
All right, through the mayor. I'll make it short and sweet. I agree with what the council has said. Make the decision as part of a team, and I think as a team, we're making the right decision. And I want to thank Recology and our staff for working together and taking care of this problem, because it was an issue that came up that could have been a much greater issue than we took care of it, and it is a cost savings for our community. In the long run, it's going to be a savings for all the citizens in our community, and we're all together on one team. We all have all 5 jurisdictions as one. And I just want to comment on that, and that's it for my comments for tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. My 2 cents simply is echoing what my colleagues up here have said. I fully support the amended agreement. I really thank Recology as a member of the subcommittee, what they bring to the table, the attitude they brought to the table, the professionalism, the information. And we had hours of discussion, questions back and forth over the course of months. Of course, this agreement or this conversation has been going on since we were initially running for office a long time ago, years ago. We've gotten to the point now where I agree with John, enough is enough. We need to make a decision and move forward as a community. I guarantee we're not necessarily perfect. We never claim to be that. However, I guarantee the decisions were made were in the best interest of everybody involved, bumper to bumper, the entire community. I'm happy to be part and aligned with RWMA again. The notion of changing the trucks just for the sake of changing the trucks, I still think that's absurd. It's a garbage truck. They have a contract to live up to. It's their responsibility and their job to replace it as they see fit. We don't need to meddle in that. The same thing with cart sizes. Now we have the option again. I think that's relevant as a customer. I don't want a 96 gallon. It's me and a Chihuahua. I don't need a 96 gallon cart, for crying out loud. But and then replacing them and the whole bit, right? So let's give a little bit of options for the community and for our customers. Biosolids is an issue that came up. I agree with Mark in that it was kicked down the road, and I think possibly even intentionally ignored or left outside of the agreement. Now that we've integrated into the whole thing, and again, Recology, thank you very much. They don't have to, but they agreed to ramp it up slowly and slowly integrate the cost increases, and they're absorbing that while they're giving us a break. That's just one thing. It goes with relationship, professionalism, and the bigger picture that they have in mind as well, and I appreciate that. Again, laws change with recycling. The idea, someone had the word is complex. I tell you what, that is an understatement when it comes to this. As every move you make creates more here. It's like a balloon when you're pushing on it, right? How do you package it up? They still have business to do. They're a for-profit company. Yes, that's true. I have no problem with that at all. They're being reasonable, and we understand that. The service they provide is good. Grace brought up an example of the customer service they provide, and we could go on and on. Probably all of us have a story about Recology where they take care of their customers, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate the opinions that were contrary to the motion we're probably going to be taking today. Everybody has the right to say so. Everybody has the right to feel the way they do. But I will stand firm, and when your principles are true, and you come from a pure place, decision making is that much easier. And this contract, after going over it and modifying it and questioning back and forth, I'm confident that this is the right thing for our community, and I plan on voting in favor of it. Thank you. With that being said, I'll entertain a motion.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
Can I do it?
Sure.
All right, through the mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the mayor to execute an amendment to the 2019 collection services franchise agreement with Recology Yuba City.
And I'll second that.
Motion to approve staff's recommendation, authorize me to execute the an amendment with the Recology for 2019. We have all those in favor, please.
Aye.
Opposed? None. There we go. Done deal. Finally.
There we go.